It is time for our social media hashtag segment. For that, we'd like to welcome in Megan Brantley, the VP of Research at LikeFolio.com, and we have Jenny Horn with us as well as we start taking a look at Southwest Airlines. Good morning to you as well, Megan.
Good morning, guys.
All righty, Jenny.
So Southwest, they have earnings tomorrow pre-market, and this is a name that's been in the headlines a lot this week because, of course, the CDC announced yesterday that coronavirus has a case in the United States, and all of the airlines tanked on the news. Southwest was, I believe, down the least of all the airlines, though, about 3%, but nonetheless...
They're not international.
Exactly, but nonetheless,
Right.
Still a substantial move for them. But, of course, the biggest thing with Southwest is their exposure to the 737 MAX. So they have 34 in their fleet, but we've kind of talked a lot on this show about the airlines, how the airlines haven't really seemed to care that much about Boeing, but I don't know, when you look at a chart of Boeing or Southwest, you see that they are a ways off their all-time highs of $66 a share. So I do think it is weighing on their bottom line a little bit, and we'll get a lot more answers, I believe, in their earnings tomorrow. So Megan, what are you seeing exactly with your data with Southwest?
So whenever we're looking at Southwest, especially right now for earnings, we're listening for people talking about booking with Southwest. We're listening for whether they're flying Southwest, they made a reservation, maybe they're talking about the loyalty program. And what we see is a little bit of a purchase intent decline. I think that we talked about this before their quarter ended, that we were kind of watching for some softening in their purchase intent numbers. And you can see on this chart, when you compare this quarter that just ended, this Q4, to the same period last time, that's about an 8% year-over-year decline in purchase intent. You can kind of see the shaded bar after this current quarter that just ended, and you can see that it's pacing a little bit lower. We're only about 20 days in, but for that reason, we're generating a slightly bearish signal for Southwest heading into this earnings.
Megan, are you seeing this industry-wide, or is this just a Southwest problem?
It's a really good question. We see a very similar trend in Delta. I believe Delta's quarter that just ended was down about 7% year over year. But whenever we look at United Airlines, who just reported yesterday, I believe we actually saw a purchase intent increase. And I think that their earnings, their revenue at least, came in about in line what people expected. So there is a little bit of a difference whenever you're looking at the Delta and Southwest performance from purchase intent perspective, but they do seem to be in line, and these two seem to be in a different tier than your American Airlines or United Airlines, especially when we look at happiness.
Yeah, Megan, that's really interesting because you say that a Delta and a Southwest are doing so poorly in this way, but they're consistently the stocks that have the best happiness for you all, correct?
Exactly. And so I think that that's why it's so important to look at these different metrics whenever we look at these airlines, because when you look at from a happiness perspective, you have Delta and Southwest in the upper 50%, near 60% positive, which for airlines, that's actually pretty good compared to United and then American at the bottom. I think American rounds out about 43% positive, just for perspective. So you clearly have a different experience for consumers that are flying Southwest and flying Delta.
So happiness is overrated, is what you're saying, basically.
No way. Okay.
I guess
Happiness does not matter in terms of the price of the stock.
Maybe not, but happiness has a lot to do with my first tweet, actually, because I like to bring some positivity.
I led you in there.
Yes, exactly, and I believe in happiness. So our first tweet is from Jeremy Stutz, who says, huge shout out to Southwest for being the best of the U.S. airlines. Professional, comfortable, free checked bags, free drinks and snacks, and free WhatsApp and iMessage in flight. A very happy Jeremy. Thank you for a great flight. So I love this. 2 checked free bags, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
Is this your surname? Is Jeremy Jenny really Jenny?
I know.
No, and Megan, we talked about airlines not too long ago, maybe only last week, and happiness was really the key point of that conversation. And now my question's kind of nuanced around this. Clearly, this is the expectation now for Southwest. They're a brand built around a better experience, where maybe something like American isn't really, as focused about that. They have a higher bar to reach, and they have happier consumers. To me, this is, the best of all worlds when it comes to this particular airline. But if less people are booking tickets and they're maybe more expensive now than they used to be, is that really going to, have an impact going forward? Because clearly we're seeing purchase intent declining.
Right. That's definitely something that we're watching, this purchase intent decline. That's not necessarily what we'd like to see. From a happiness perspective, one thing we looked into specifically this round of research is cancellation mentions. With the grounding of the 737 MAX, that's something that people always ask, what is the impact of this on these different airlines. And what you can see on this chart is that Southwest and Delta, they're at the bottom, but this is actually where they want to be, right? When you talk about people having to have their flights rebooked or canceled. It was interesting that whenever we were looking at these tweets, we actually had to do some special cleaning for Southwest because the tweets were mentions of Southwest canceled, but it was such a good experience. I got all my money back. It was so easy. It was hassle-free. And, that's definitely something, normally you don't see a positive tweet in association with any type of cancellation, but we saw a lot of people who like to book Southwest, particularly because they don't have to worry about the ramifications of cancellation.
Yeah, Megan, I loved that my tweet basically correlated exactly with your chart because, of course, we see that these people are really happy with their experience with Southwest, and even though their flights are getting canceled, it is a really positive thing. And it's also fascinating because Southwest has the largest exposure to Boeing 737. So it just seems like kind of the opposite narrative that you'd think, and that actually is a perfect segue into my next tweet, which asks, would you fly on a Boeing 737 MAX even if the FAA clears it in June? So the results were yes, if it's cleared, it's safe, 33.4%, and no way, 49.5%, and my favorite was I don't know, 17%.
All right, I'm going to give you guys my world according to GARP theory on this.
I love this.
Okay? This plane, the 737 MAX, when it finally gets approved and goes in the air, will be the safest, most scrutinized plane ever to fly ever.
I agree. So
Yes.
I think I'm in the yes category because
I'm
I
definitely
think
a
after
yes.
these many, many months, we're going on a year of it being grounded, I would
Right.
think this is the most scrutinized, most safe plane out there.
It's not like they're taking the wings off and changing the engines and putting the wings back on. This is a software glitch
Right.
that they're changing here. So I think this is going to be an incredibly safe plane.
Here's a question for you, Kevin. Do you actually think that it flies again under this name? Do you think
A lot of people were saying that, and I don't, that's a tough one because changing a name is a big deal for a plane. I don't know if they do that, but I get
like
what
a
you mean.
rebrand, right.
Right, but like that would fool anyone.
One thing I will say, though, when it comes to some of this technology in planes, though, so I recently flew on American, and they had a new 787 big plane, very nice, but you can't actually shut the windows anymore. It's like a button you click, and it tints it, and it's like it doesn't do anything. So to me, it's like they're overthinking some stuff. Just put the window, shut
right.
so you can take a nap and you don't
Right.
have to worry about it. So some of the technology, I mean, clearly there's different issues now, even with cars, as it's become more and more electronic. But these again are high-class problems as technology is increasing. Megan, when you're looking at this, obviously it's two different things. You talk about happiness being really, really great for Southwest. You talk about the cancellation mentions, even some of them being happy when their plane flight is actually canceled, but less people talking about booking it. So of all this stuff, what carries the most weight when it comes to LikeFolio and what they're looking at for a stock price call?
So we have something that, we're developing our earnings signal. And so this takes into effect all of these different metrics, your buzz, your mention volume, your purchase intent, and as well as happiness scores. And when we weight all of these things together, our signal is slightly bearish. So I think that is related to the fact that purchase intent is declining year over year, and happiness is pretty flat. I think it's down maybe 1% year over year, which it's still much higher than many of its peers. However, there's a little bit of a softening there as well. So that's just something that we're watching into earnings. I think that it does bode really well for Southwest that, as Jenny mentioned, they are the most exposed to these groundings, and they seem to be doing the best job mitigating those cancellations. So I think that Southwest is still, making consumers happy. They still have a very loyal consumer base, but we're a little bit worried about that purchase intent decline.
So Megan, with the stock now trading around $53.90, do you think this is a good, cheaper price point to get in ahead of earnings?
I mean, perhaps maybe, that could be an outlook that you have moving forward that you think, especially when the 737 MAX groundings are, when that is remedied, that it has plenty of room to grow. I think that would be a much longer term position. From a strictly earnings play, our signal is trending more bearish.
And then, Megan, just one more kind of general conversation around Southwest versus the other airlines. We know it's included in kind of that big four U.S. domestic airlines group, but how they go about things is so much different with the pick your own seat and how their boarding process works. Do you find that their kind of responses and mentions are more binary? Are there just as many people that maybe just will not fly Southwest that are really, really loyal to it? Or is that not really what you're seeing?
You know, that's tough to say. I think a lot of times when people are choosing an airline, yes, they're loyal to certain airlines, but at the end of the day, you're also going to pick the flight that gets you where you need to go, that has the availability. And I think you guys have mentioned before, you know, Southwest isn't as prevalent in Chicago, or maybe it's Delta. Delta isn't as prevalent up in Chicago. Yeah. But I think that availability and convenience still definitely plays into it. But, you know, if you have two different options and you're choosing between a Southwest and an American, I think that, you know, people are going to roll with Southwest, no question.
All righty, Megan, we'll leave it there. A little bit bearish on the outlook for this particular earnings call, but if you get a little bit of a sell-off, maybe that'll shift for a longer-term play. But great stuff as always, and we appreciate you joining us.